If you want to add real-time features to your ASP.NET Core applications, or even add some real-time to your .NET Core microservices, you should definitely check out ASP.NET Core SignalR, which allows us to create real-time applications in no time at all. So I have Brady here, my good friend, and he's going to talk about some of the really cool features that are coming up in the next version, and even in the current version of ASP.NET Core SignalR. Welcome to another episode of the On.NET Show. My name is Cecil Phillip, and I'm your host today. And with us, I have probably one of my most favorite people on Microsoft. We have Brady Gaster joining us today.
Hey.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. It's nice to see you again, as always.
So I know it's a little crazy outside with the weather, and I know you took a little bit of made a lot of effort to be here. So I really appreciate that.
That's okay. That's okay. I actually made a video, so if anybody wants to see what I had to brave to get here.
You have a video?
I have a video.
Can I see it?
We can totally see it. So
okay.
I live in a place called Sammamish, which is on a plateau.
Okay.
And it's up way high. Okay, so there's no really safe way to get here.
Right.
This road might be one of the least safe ways to get here. I actually cut it off about halfway down because there was a wreck, and I didn't want the people to be on camera that they were in a wreck.
How did you take this video?
Well, I have a Wrangler, so I'm not afraid to go anywhere.
Okay.
So I positioned my camera up on the dashboard. I've got one of those little things that spins around. So I have it basically on the dashboard, and I kind of tilted it so we could see up and just hit record.
Oh, cool. So you weren't like holding your camera while you're driving?
No, I would not.
Because we don't do that, right? That's good.
We don't do that, nor do we talk. So, but you can see it's pretty snowy outside, and once you get down to where the lake is, we're actually following a snowplow.
Yeah, so you see that, that's crazy to me. I'm from Florida, and we don't get weather like that, so I'd probably die if I had to go deal with this on a daily basis.
That's why you need a Jeep.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. That's an
okay.
awesome video, though.
It's fun, yeah. So we'll go out later and go snowplowing in the Jeep if you want.
We can talk about
it. Good, yeah. Since you're from Florida, it's probably a random thing for you. Probably.
Yeah, we've never done that before, so we could talk about it.
We could do this. Look out on the roads later.
Okay. So you're here to talk to us today about SignalR.
Absolutely.
Right, so for some of the folks that might be watching that maybe they don't know what it is, why don't we do a quick one-on-one? What is SignalR? What do we do with it?
So
what are some of the use cases?
So I have a deck here. I'm going to go ahead and run, and I know our good buddy Robert Green never likes to show decks on Channel 9, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. So what SignalR is, you probably heard of WebSockets. You also probably heard of server-sent events or any of the other real-time-ish technologies like long polling, et cetera, et cetera. So the way I like to talk about it is if you think back to, talking to one of your project managers, and he said, well, people don't really want to have to refresh. They just want to see when the data is updated. And you're like, well, how do I do that? So you start thinking polling or iterating over. So the nice thing about SignalR is it's an abstraction. And we knew that WebSockets wasn't going to be the last end-all be-all thing for real-time HTTP. There's probably going to be something that comes after that.
Yeah.
So what we do is we wrote an abstraction, and I'll kind of show you how it works in a simple little animation. So with old school clients and servers, aka those which don't support WebSockets or have it turned off, basically it works like this. You have a long polling scene.
Okay.
Like the client says, do you have data, do you have data, do you have data?
Sure.
And finally the server says, yep, I've got some data. Yep. And then what happens? We start polling again. Do you have data? Do you have data? Do you have data? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how SignalR works under the covers if WebSockets or server-sent events aren't there. Okay. Now, in the case where they are there, we have this thing called negotiation in SignalR, where you actually, the client reaches out and says, what can you do for me? The server says, I support WebSockets, and then you can party on it. So effectively, it's kind of what the conversation looks like when you're talking about modern browsers. Basically, both sides say, I do real time, do you? I totally do real time. All right, let's party in real time.
Sure. So now it's like a handshake, right? We just agree on what we're going to use, and then we use that throughout the lifetime of the
Exactly. And in SignalR speak, we like to call that, or in the team room, we like to call that process negotiation. So it's like the client is basically reaching out and saying, what can you do? Can you do WebSockets? If so, that's what we're going to do here.
Got it.
I think it helps best to kind of start with a demo.
You got a demo? Let's take a look.
I got so many demos, it'll make your head spin. All right, so what we have here is a demo that I did at IglooConf in Finland recently. I'm using Three.js here on the client. And you'll see that I have a spinning, it almost looks like the Superman 2 prison, where they're trapped in the, I'm showing my age again, I'm sorry.
That's kind of cool though. Is this all happening in the browser?
It's all happening in the browser. So this is totally happening in the browser. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up another browser, which you'll see right here. And you'll see this URL is going to realtime3dweb.azurewebsites.net.
Okay.
And then if I take this guy and shrink him up a little bit here, you'll see that he's going to the same place with WAC control. The idea behind this is the XYZ control, and I can actually control any of the axes on this guy just by using one of these.
Oh, I like
so
that.
I can actually change things up right here, and I can go like this. But you know, that's kind of cool. The nice thing is, like, you could actually pull it up in your web browser, and you could actually use those sliders here. We'll have another real-time thing here in a minute across demos. But to show you what else you can do with that, actually pull up my mobile phone here, and on my mobile phone I've got a app that's also listening to the same SignalR hub, which we'll talk about here in a minute.
Okay.
And the idea behind this is it's going to actually tap into my gyroscope on my phone in my browser, and if I hit reset center, see if it'll refresh here, and then refresh this guy, and now I can actually see here.
Oh, nice.
So you can see as I move my phone, we're actually rotating that panel in real time.
That's very cool.
Isn't that neat?
So is that a web app or is that like a mobile
Totally
Xamarin
web.
app?
This is not a Xamarin app. This is not a Xamarin app, not a native iOS app. This is just a mobile web browser.
Nice. I
So
like that.
yeah, it's all out there on public. I'll put a link up later. For
Yeah, we'll
people.
put the links in the show
Yeah.
notes so everybody can check it out.
Right. So this is the idea behind SignalR, and one thing that you saw is when I had that when I had the thing up with the sliders. The idea behind the sliders is like I can control X and you can control Y, but if I'm controlling X, you actually can't control X until I let go.
Got it.
So it's kind of a mouse down, mouse up thing. The idea behind that is we have this thing in SignalR called a hub. A hub literally lives on the server side, and it is pretty much what it sounds like. You've got all the spokes, all the clients, and then the hub kind of lives in the center. And what you saw earlier is that, you know, we use the clients.all. And in clients.all, a client will actually send a message into that hub, and then I'm going to say clients.all.doWork, or, you know, invoke a method on the hub, and that goes to all the connected clients. At the same time, with SignalR, you can actually target an individual client. So in this case, you'll see that I've said, you know, like Damien sent a message in, and we did clients.caller. That's only going to call back to him because he's the caller of that particular method. So in SignalR, we have the concept of invoking, and then we also have the concept of being able to push an event back out to the client.
Got it.
So if I get out of my deck here, because I know we'd rather look at code.
Sure, let's take a look at some code.
If I flip into my code real quick, you'll see that I have, if I can go into the right, pardon me, I might not have the right guy open here. Let me back out, pardon. CD igloo conf, and then CD real-time web. Sorry about that.
No worries.
And I'm in dark mode, I apologize.
So you're pulling this up now on Visual Studio Code.
I'm using Visual Studio Code.
Right, so that means that you're running it on, I'm guessing you're running it on a Mac, right? So that means that SignalR is running on a Mac. So,
Exactly.
And that's because we're running on .NET Core, right?
Exactly.
It's cross-platform. You can run it on Linux, Mac machines, Windows machines, doesn't matter.
Exactly. You could actually use, as we'll talk about here in a minute, if you wanted to use SignalR inside of the plumbing, let's say of your microservices running inside of Kubernetes, you can actually call a SignalR hub running on a server, or as we'll talk about in a minute in Azure, from a background service. So you could actually call it from a background service running in .NET Core.
Cool, okay.
So like we talked about earlier, we talked about the server-side hub. I'm just going to show you one quick hub. So I've got this rotation hub here up on my screen.
Yeah.
And what you'll see is that I've got a method here called lock access, another one called unlock access, and this is actually the client making a call into my hub.
Got it.
So this is what we would call like an invocation. Like I'm going to actually, it's almost like a REST call. Like I'm actually calling my hub from the client to the server. That's kind of the normal, you know, the way things work.
Right, sure.
When we talk about HTTP. Now where things get a little interesting is when we start to talk about things like clients.others, or as I showed in the slides earlier, clients.all, or clients.user, and I can actually target a username. So here I could say Cecil if I wanted to, and I could send something over there if I want to. Now this is like my C# code, my .NET Core code, like I said, running on my server side, or in my case, running on my Mac.
Right. So we have the ability to not only send events from the client to the server, and then the server runs some code, but then we could go the other way. We could have something would happen on the server and then send that information
That's
back.
exactly right. That's exactly right. And the way that works is that chart you saw earlier, when we were talking about long polling and whatnot. Effectively, like let's just take the long polling out of the equation, take the server send events out of the equation. Let's just talk about it in terms of WebSockets. My client is real-time connected to my server. Whenever something happens, it just knows to send a message over that WebSocket back to the client again.
Right.
And then the client would literally handle it. If I were to look right here, realtime.js, and our client, we would instantiate an instance of our hub connection. And in this case, actually give it a URL. You wire that URL up in your startup CS file. It's basically like routing an MVC controller. And then if I scroll down below, you'll see connection.on. That's literally whenever the server is going to send me the control locked event. Actually, get rid of this, and I will split my screen here. So if I were to close this, you'll see here that we've got connection.on, and look at my file type, JavaScript. In my client-side JavaScript, I'm going to listen for the control locked event that's going to come from my server whenever the clients.send core async method is called. So like you said earlier, I could actually have a REST API that I'm sending data into my SignalR hub or into the server, and then I could literally turn around and then push back out. You know, so if you think about SignalR as, I hate to say it, but think of SignalR as pushing from the server to the client.
Got it.
So it's a really strong use case for it.
Right. So like these on methods that are here in JavaScript, essentially, I'm supplying it the string, but that string is just like the name of the event that I'm listening to.
Correct.
Right. It's nothing special. It's just the name of a string, and then I'm guessing on that pipeline.
Exactly.
You know, we're looking at the messages that are going back and forth.
Exactly.
We're saying, okay, well, if this is the thing that's coming now,
right,
this is the method, or this is the path that I want you to execute.
Exactly. And if you think about this as like a higher level abstraction, like I've done a little bit of coding directly against a WebSocket. Actually, right over here with Jeff Fritz a couple of weeks ago, we're building an SDK for the Elgato Stream Deck in .NET Core. That little bitty device actually runs a WebSocket server.
Really?
But they hand out a protocol, which SignalR actually has a protocol spec as well. So when we did the SignalR Core, we actually rewrote it from the ground up, and we created a hub specification and a hub protocol specification. The idea behind that is if you wanted to write a client in SignalR for Go or Python or whatever else, you could do that using that specification.
Nice.
And you don't really care about what's happening on the server side or if it's written in .NET. All you care about is if we send you a 1, you serialize it this way, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. And I know like SignalR is open source, right? So I'm guessing that protocol is documented in open source too, so I could go online and if I wanted to do my own, like I could go and check that out.
And that's exactly why we did that hub specification. I could give you the link, so it'll be in the show notes down below. But if you want to build your own client, you could definitely look at that. That's the best place to get started.
Cool. That's awesome.
So yeah, but what we ended up doing was we used the Elgato Stream Deck WebSocket API, and if you think about that's WebSocket is really just a connection. It's the protocol that's important. So they have a different protocol than we have. So you can't just put SignalR on top of a WebSocket. But having programmed directly against a WebSocket, trust me, SignalR is a lot easier because you've got like the higher order, APIs.
Right.
So one thing I'd mentioned earlier, if I flip over here, you'll see if I do a quick refresh on this. Now you'll see here that I've got. Let me zoom in. I'm just opening up my my browser tools. You'll see here that it says SSE connected. So that's actually this guy is connected over SSE to my Azure website. Now, if I were to go into my app here.
And SSE, when we say SSE, that's service send events.
Exactly, service send events. So if I were to go into my app service panel here, or blade in the portal, and you can see that I've got this little checkbox right here, WebSockets. I can literally go here and just turn that on, and then I'll save it. And usually takes just a second, and the app will spin back up. Now let me do a refresh here. That's probably going to die for a second while it spins back up.
So we're guessing now that you turn that on, we're going to have WebSocket support available inside of our Azure App Service. And all we have to do is like flick that button, right?
Exactly.
And now it's going to be running.
Exactly. And now it's going to be running. And now if I were to zoom in here, you'll see that all I did was change that one thing in the portal, and now we're actually running WebSockets.
Nice.
So that shows you how, without having to do any coding, you change your underlying protocol, and SignalR just knows what to do. It just does that negotiation handshake, and now it knows to party on WebSockets instead.
Right. So it just checks, it gets like the best available version, or the best available protocol.
Exactly. Or not protocol, careful.
I'm sorry.
Because it's the hub protocol. It's always the hub protocol. You're right. It gets the most efficient
transport.
Transport.
There we go.
Thank you.
Got it.
That
nice.
name. I tried to be know-it-all, and I forgot my word. So, but the good thing is you don't have to stop, with an HTML client. You could actually do things in background services. Here's a doc that we recently put out.
Okay.
Actually, just put this out yesterday.
Nice.
And if you were to go to the ASP.NET Core section in docs and then go down to real-time apps, you'll see under the hosting and scaling area, we have this SignalR with background services. Right here, the idea behind this is, let's say you have a couple of different background services in .NET Core that are doing things on the server side. You name it. It could be a million different things. You might need to use SignalR to just kind of report how the process is going. Like you might have a microservice that takes the order and a microservice that checks the balance and all this. And if you wanted to have some sort of a dashboard to watch the traffic flow, you could do that. And in this doc, we actually show you, we've got a pretty simple example of server-side clock. In this doc, we actually show you how you would use a background service to host a hub. And we also show you how you would use a background service to respond to events on a hub. So you kind of see it on either end of the equation there.
So let me ask you this. So for this particular use case, what would be the benefit of me running SignalR through this background service versus just me having it in my app regularly?
Not necessarily any benefit, but I would back you up there and I would ask you, like, what does it mean to be an app versus a background service? In .NET Core, I can have an ASP.NET Core Razor app that is a pretty dumb terminal that just reports data because it's got a number of background services that I wire up in the DI layer that do all my work on the backside. So I could put my hub in there if I want to. It's not always the place people would put things. To give you an idea, I have an app right now that I'm working on. It's kind of a dashboard app that it kind of does exactly that. It's creating a bunch of resources in Azure and then deleting those resources in Azure. And that all happens in a Azure DevOps build. I'm actually using the next topic we're going to talk about, which is the Azure SignalR service. And the Azure SignalR service has a REST API front end. And I can actually use that. Let's say I have a client like a small device, IoT device of some sort, and it might not have WebSocket support, but it has the ability to ping an HTTP endpoint. I could actually expose a SignalR service endpoint over REST, and it would just send me a message that literally says, I want you to do the say hello message, and here's the payload I want you to send. And it will then turn around, the SignalR service will turn around and then send that message to all of the connected clients. Got it. So when we talk about the Azure SignalR service, we've also got a doc in that same hosting area here, and our good friend Anthony Chu has done quite a bit with the Azure SignalR service. What's it used for? Effectively, you can take SignalR and make it serverless. So our mutual friend Anthony has done a great amount of work on these things, if I can find them in here. The bindings. So if I can find the SignalR service bindings for Azure Functions, these are bindings that you can use from your Node.js app, your Node.js function, or from your .NET function. And what effectively happens is whenever I call a function, I want that function to drop a message into the SignalR service that all of my clients can kind of respond to if I want them to. The really exciting thing about his bindings is that you don't need .NET anywhere.
So you mean I don't need a hub? Or I don't need a ASP.NET app or anything like that?
Nothing. You don't need any ASP.NET.
But I can still communicate real time with like my various connected clients.
Exactly.
Oh, that's cool.
So we have another thing that I've kind of worked on with Anthony on the side. It's a tiny little app here. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of open it up. And what you'll see is in my VS Code window, I've got a function JavaScript, a function .NET. And we're going to look at the function JavaScript. And what we have to do today is you'll see that I have negotiate. Negotiate is like a reserved URL in SignalR speak. You heard me talk about transport negotiation earlier. Today we want to make this a little bit more transparent and better for you. We're working with the functions team on this. But you would have to actually create, if you were doing this in Node, you would actually have to create your own negotiate guy or function. And what this will do is it literally hands you back the connection info for your client to be able to reach out and talk to the SignalR service on the back end.
So I'm guessing that's like connection strings, tokens, like things of that nature?
It's not even that. It's literally the URL and the connection string to your SignalR service.
Oh, okay.
So I could actually put that in something like Android code, which I've got right here because our good friend Mikhail on the team has done a wonderful job at working on an official Java client, managed Java client for SignalR. So right here you'll see that I've got a URL, and this is a URL of my function, and all this app is going to do is connect to that function, establish actual connection, and then I'm going to call that function from somewhere else. And that function will trigger. When it triggers, it'll take a payload, and it'll drop pieces of that payload on the SignalR service that will then come over to this Java app. And notice I didn't use any .NET robots anywhere. There's no .NET anywhere in this equation. So what I'll do first is great little feature of VS Code. I want to go ahead and do Control-Shift-P, and you'll see that I have this word emulator here. That's because it actually gives me the ability to run my Android emulators directly from within.
You can do it in VS Code? I didn't know that. That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool, right?
Okay.
I don't know if you can actually build Android apps in VS Code and deploy them and all that, but if you already have your emulators on your machine,
and it's already set up, it'll pull it in and run it.
So that's pretty cool. So I've already got this guy built. Notice I'm not debugging. This is pre-compiled app. So I've got this app here called pull request R. Of course, we have to call it something with an R.
SignalR naming convention, right?
Exactly. Totally is. So I've got the pull requester guy right here, and what he's doing is he is listening for a function that I've got right here at pullrequester.azurewebsites.net.
Okay.
So what I've got is a very simple, empty, pretty much repository here, and the idea behind this repo is it's actually going to, whenever I do a pull request or any activity related to a pull request, it's going to send a webhook over to my Azure function. Now that Azure function lives right here, and whenever the function runs, all it does is it literally just grabs the method and pops it back onto the SignalR service.
Sure.
So if I were to go over here real quickly and just say, go into the README, MD, hit edit real quick, and we'll say
so you're going to make some change in GitHub, and then you get commit it.
Exactly.
That'll cause the webhook to fire,
Yep.
and that will trigger your function.
Exactly. So I'll do this right here, and I'll say Brady Gaster, changes, and I'll hit propose file change. And immediately, that's going to send a pull request over. I'll hit create. Now let me do this. Uh-oh, our app broke. Of course that would happen. So I've got the app running here, and if I were to go right here and say create pull request, there we go.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
So it's already come in. So that was GitHub sending my function HTTP request, my function turning around and dropping some components of that onto the SignalR service, and then the SignalR service popping a message off to my Android client. Notice I said no .NET anywhere in there.
Right. I think what's really cool about this demo is that, obviously, like a lot of .NET folks know about SignalR,
Yep.
but like now we're showing SignalR like to everybody, right?
Exactly.
Like, we're seeing it in JavaScript, we're seeing it in Java.
Exactly.
So it doesn't matter what the client is. Like we could use WebSockets or whatever to talk to it.
Exactly.
And work with the service.
Exactly. And while I'm thinking about it, pardon me, nose started running, probably from driving around cold all day. So if I do SignalR Hub protocol specification, do a quick little search for it. Here we go. And this is actually the hub protocol. It's right on GitHub. Okay. So this is like a part of our code. We actually ship this with code, and we keep it pretty regularly
updated. And it's versioned and all that type of stuff?
Yep.
Got it.
And we recently added message pack support. So we have, previously it was only JSON.
Yeah.
And one thing that people complained about a lot early on in SignalR was there was a hard requirement on jQuery. That's gone. You don't have to do that anymore.
Okay, no more jQuery.
It's all native JavaScript since the ASP.NET Core era started. And what this guy will do is this document will do is it'll literally walk you through. If you wanted to build a client, I'm looking at you, David Justice. I would love to have you write a Go client. So there's a lot of other people out there that would like to have Python, Go, et cetera. Let's real time Rust. That's another one my buddy Justice is into. So if you're interested, feel free to jump in here and learn how to build your own SignalR client.
Great, that's awesome.
The last thing I'll show you is this super secret feature we've got. It's not really super secret anymore. And you'll see the URL that I've got here called Streamer.
I love your design skills in this. This is amazing.
Oh, this is amazing. This isn't mine. This is a wonderful dev on the team. Did a great job with this demo.
Okay.
We don't have the code for it out yet. We're still doing some code review,
Sure.
aka teasing him. He did much better than I could have ever done. But we introduced streaming in ASP.NET Core SignalR, and that's the ability to stream from the server to the client.
Yeah.
So you can actually use like the new built-in channels and pipelines and just stream data very fast. With our new 3.0 preview feature was to add this concept of client to server streaming. Okay. So in client to server streaming, rather than just like pumping data out from the server side, we can actually pump data in from the client. And I want you to try this on your machine.
Okay.
So I'm on screen, and Cecil's on his computer, and we're both on streamer.azurewebsites.net.
Streamer.azurewebsites.net, got it.
And he's just gonna enter in his name or say live from channel 9 or something.
Yeah, I'm just gonna type in Cecil here real quick.
He's gonna say start streaming.
Start streaming.
And he's starting to stream, and what's gonna happen is, since he's streaming, of course it's not gonna show up on my screen now. Random stream.
Cecil, enter, start streaming.
Start streaming. Okay, now here's Cecil. You can see that as soon as he started streaming, you see that his name popped in here.
Yeah.
And I can click watch stream.
And
what's actually happening here, Cecil waves.
Oh, that's cool.
Isn't that neat?
So it's almost like instantaneous. Like, that's crazy.
Totally instantaneous. So what's happening, and this is the even cool part. Now, if you can't see it because you're streaming.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and stop yours. So stop your stream real quick.
Sure, I'll stop my stream.
Stop yours, and I'll do one now. Do Brady G. I'll hit start streaming.
Okay, so now what's happening now is that your name has just popped up on my screen, and I can hit watch your stream.
Yep.
Right, and I'm looking at you right now.
Yes, he's looking at me, so I can wave.
Very cool.
And now if I scroll down here, you'll see here's the video being captured. You don't see it. Actually, you might see it over there. You see you.
Yeah, there's a yeah.
But what I see right here is an image, and what's happening is the camera is actually taking a frame-by-frame image, and then it's converting each frame into ASCII, and this is the best part, sending that ASCII to the server side, and then SignalR is pumping that ASCII back out. So what you're seeing rendering on my screen is coming from the server at the same time it's coming from the server on your screen.
So all the image manipulation is happening in the browser, and then it goes to the server?
It's ASCII.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? It's Brennan Conroy, amazing dev
Nice.
on the team.
That's
Did a
awesome.
Great job. We'll have the code for this sometime soon. We still have a couple code reviews to do on it.
Got it.
We just want to make sure that we're not showing you some bad habits.
Of course.
So,
Sure.
samples with
Proper
great
security
samples,
reviews and all of that type of stuff.
all that. You have to let Barry look at it. So
Yeah, I hear Barry's pretty scary, man. Like,
he's not scary. He's
No?
He's just intimidating.
okay, sure.
Yeah. Have you had him on the show yet?
I have not. I need to give him a call and get him to come
We
on.
should do this. We should definitely get Blood R on the show.
We'll
That'd
talk
be good
about it
times.
when we get off.
Yeah,
we'll
be
get
good.
him on here.
So really, that's kind of our quick lap around SignalR and kind of where we are with the ASP.NET Core SignalR and
Awesome,
the
man.
functions and serverless and all the good stuff. I kind of hoped Anthony would pop in and surprise us with some new demos.
I know, but like he had some other stuff to do, so we'll get him on the next time.
That makes sense. He knows how to drive in snow.
He should. He lives in Vancouver, right? So
Exactly.
he should know that stuff works.
Right?
So one last question,
Sure.
really quick before we go. So we've talked a lot about some of the new stuff that's coming in SignalR, what's SignalR good for. What do we talk about, or really quickly, should we not do with SignalR? Like when is it not a good use case
This is
for
great.
this?
This is great.
Because we have tons of messaging things,
We have tons of messaging things. Okay, so let me be very clear here. SignalR it started as PubSub real time. Like
Yes.
it was PubSub plus real time, or it was real time and people used it as PubSub. You pick your poison. Things like Event Grid, Event Hubs,
Service bus.
Service bus, durable functions, all those things serve a very important role in your distributed architecture. What the role that SignalR plays is really that real-time thing. It's like keeping your users engaged. It's not for your enterprise message pumps. It's not that, okay? You could wrap some logic around your SignalR hubs on the client and the server. We're actually talking about writing a doc on this right now, where you literally kind of build your own ACK experience.
Sure.
So, on the client, I would count each message I send and make sure that they're processed sequentially, and if not, I know something blew up.
Yeah.
Okay, but the joke that I tell people is SignalR is not the thing you want to use for collecting your shopping cart orders and transmitting them to the database, because you'll drop 1 out of 1,000 messages. I don't know what the exact number is. It just depends on your pipe. Between SignalR 1 and SignalR 2, we made some improvements to make the performance a lot better, such as we disabled automatic reconnection. We're actually talking about adding that back in with a couple of different options, like like an intelligent back off, or you telling me how many times you want to try to connect. We're going to add some of that back in, but then we had some features that we did, like we would try to repump the messages that you'd missed while you were disconnected. That wasn't
Not a
wise.
good idea.
So we're not going to do that again. Don't ask. Never going to do that again. It was bad. Damien and David will say that was bad. So I'm not picking on them. They actually told me. So what I would say, David and Damien are the guys that created SignalR and .NET Core and everything else that we know and love. But what I would say is that SignalR is not really for durable enterprise pub sub. Now, you would use Azure Functions for your durable enterprise pub sub, and to inform you when things are happening, the steps in the process, you would pump messages into the SignalR service and have a client listening for it.
Sure.
So each thing has its piece.
Like you said, like we have Service Bus, and we have a lot of these other messaging services,
Exactly.
each within their own special traits and use cases that we could use for those type of scenarios as well.
Exactly. And the only other scenario that I would say a lot of people have had mixed results, and it's not a problem with SignalR, it's a problem with space-time, and that is using SignalR anything in mobile capacity, because you go out of zone. You're not going to be connected. So scenarios like that. When people look at SignalR, the immediate response is, I want to replace all my REST APIs with this. I want to replace all my pub sub with this. I would really, as the PM of the product, I would love for you to do that, but I wouldn't feel responsible if you did.
I got it. I got
so,
it. Like it's not the be-all, end-all messaging framework for all things on the web.
Right, but I'm still young. We have time.
things might happen.
We could do this.
Okay.
So, yeah, we could definitely do this.
Got it.
We could do more with SignalR. Let's put it that way.
Awesome.
Yeah, we have plans. So yeah,
cool, man. Well, hey, Brady, thank you so much for coming
Thanks a
on,
lot.
man. Like,
Thanks a lot.
I really wanted to have you on the show. I'm super excited that you're here.
I'm glad to be here. I was glad to be here. Now I have to meet with Scott.
Nice. So thank you all for watching the show, man. This was another episode of the On.NET Show, and we had Brady coming on, letting us know about some of the really cool features that are coming on in ASP.NET Core SignalR.